Live with it. The temperature has dropped 100 degrees. Stay alive. Survivor of the end of days. At first it was just down jackets selling out, frozen water pipes bursting, and power restrictions throughout the city. Then the crew that went to fix it died of hypothermia and the medical system was crippled. Cold snaps swept across the globe, even countries at the center of the equator were not spared. In just 1 month temperatures plummeted 100 degrees. Entire cities were turned into ice sculptures, and trees were frozen to powder before they could lose their leaves. Rivers and oceans across the globe are frozen, and not a drop of water can be found on the surface. If it were a zombie apocalypse, mankind would be able to fight, but what can mankind do in the face of nature? This is not a movie, it's real. Extreme cold apocalypse now. 1. Early in the morning, the phone ringing like a rush, I impatiently picked up the phone. Is a long time no contact cousin. What's wrong sis? It's early in the morning. Mien mien. I have something serious to tell you. Every word I say next is not a joke. You have to listen carefully. I have a jolt. Cousin tone so serious. Is there something wrong at home? What's the matter, sis? Don't scare me. Let me tell you, the latest monitoring results from the National Climate Center show that the strongest La Nina phenomenon in history may occur, and many high-latitude countries have already entered the winter season, the precursor of which is the warmer weather, which will be followed by a drastic drop in temperature. This is also the earliest winter for mankind, and it is expected that in a month's time the world will experience an unprecedented large-scale climate cooling, also known as the end of the glacier. What's that, cousin? What glacial apocalypse? You mean like the movie The Day After Tomorrow? I'm a bit puzzled. Is today April Fool's Day? That's what your aunt and uncle got from working at the Weather Bureau. There's no time. We've already found a shelter and stocked up on supplies. You should hurry up and get ready too, and by the way, tell your mom and dad the news. Cousin's voice screeched to a halt, and the phone looked like it had been hung up by someone on purpose. What's all this? Cousin, this joke is not fun. I ignored it and went back to sleep. The next day, when I went downstairs to pick up my takeout, I realized that the temperature was indeed strange. It was already November, the sun had been poisonous for a long time, the sky was clear, I didn't even feel cold when I wore a sweater alone, and I even wanted to wear half sleeves. After a week, the temperature was still unusually warm, and even had a tendency to get warmer. I had to associate it with the words of my cousin, who never seemed to joke about me. I couldn't sit still and planned to make a phone call to ask my cousin again what was going on. Hello, the number you have dialed is empty. A cold mechanical female voice came from over there. How did the number become empty? I don't know if it's a woman's sixth sense, remembering my cousin's serious tone. Whatever, I'd rather believe it than not. Today must start to prepare. Thinking of this, I hurriedly called my boyfriend Feng Jiaying. 2. This winter has been exceptionally warm, and as we enter the month of November, it is still as warm as a spring day. The breeze is gentle, the sun is warm, and even the trees and plants along the roadside are lush and green. And that's where the climatic anomaly lies. I rushed into the mall with my boyfriend and started shopping like crazy. Nothing else, just quilts, warm babies and super thick down jackets. With a mountain of supplies, I pushed my boyfriend Feng Jiaying out of the mall under the astonished gazes of the crowd. The stuff will be delivered to our newly rented villa tomorrow. Gee, now let's go to the next place to sweep the goods. Mian, you don't have a fever, do you? He touched my forehead. Gee, I'm not sick. I let out a deep breath. I told you, my cousin never jokes with me like that. My aunt and uncle's family all work at the Weather Bureau. The day before yesterday my cousin called me out of the blue and told me to hurry up and find shelter and stock up on food. The end of the extreme cold is coming. I didn't believe it at first, but the temperatures have been getting more and more wrong lately. In a month's time, mankind might be in for an extreme cold disaster. It took me 10 minutes to explain the cause and effect to G. Although he was half convinced, he couldn't argue with me and accompanied me around for the whole day, buying a whole bunch of things that he didn't think he could use. I have always been a post-apocalyptic fan, read countless disaster movies. But now, the end of the world may really be coming. My heart suddenly felt a burst of anxiety and fear. It turns out that reading what others have written is really different from what you have personally experienced. 3. A month's time. To say long is not long, to say short is not short. I learned of the news. Has passed a week, then counting the beginning of the month swing a few days, now only less than 3 weeks left. There was absolutely no way I could afford to delay the prep work. In between rushing to my next purchasing destination, I wrote an online article about the recent weather anomalies, with lots of my own insights, and a list of supplies to prepare. If those who read it could trust me, I could help them out. But I was unknown and had little influence, and there were only a dozen or so comments with very few replies. Most of the comments were mocking me, but one of them caught my attention. He actually analyzed extreme weather in a serious manner. This netizen's screen name is Wang Sister Wholesale Eggs. Sister Wang Wholesale Dirt Eggs commented, "The idea of renting a villa with an oversized 3-story basement is fine, but be sure to add frost-resistant concrete inside and out. Choose C40 for the concrete strength, and choose F300 for the frost resistance level. Solar power generators are essential, but build concrete barriers around them, and use vacuum glass for the upper part of the building. No matter how much defense above ground, in the end, it will not be able to live, so it is necessary to directly transfer to the ground." Sister Wang Wholesale Earthen Eggs made these suggestions as if she had really experienced it. I no longer hesitate and immediately asked for connections to contact one of the best local decoration companies, and repeated the words of Sister Wang Wholesale Earthen Eggs in their original form. It took a lot of effort and enough money to get the renovation workers to come and help us with the wall reinforcement and insulation today. 4. After the time was set, I still felt a sense of panic in my heart. How small human beings are in the face of natural disasters. I don't know if I can survive this disaster, but I know I have to try my best to survive. A G saw me worrying and comforted me. "Don't worry. It's really the end of the world. I'll go with you." The woman died with her husband. I wanted to punch him in the face. It's so late, but still making such jokes. I didn't care about him and turned around to continue shopping. "Don't dawdle, hurry up. Because it's a newly rented house, there's nothing in it, and the supplies I bought in advance won't be delivered until next Monday." So I increased the money and asked the decorators to guarantee the quality and speed, and finish the decoration before next Monday. Since I was generous, the decorators were very helpful and not only finished quickly but also with good quality, finishing one day earlier than the original date. I graciously settled the final payment. Before they left, I also kindly reminded, "Maybe going to have to cool down, have to pay attention to keep warm." The decorator laughed and said, "Little girl, look at this weather. I don't think it will snow this year. Forget it. No one will believe me." This week, Feng Jiaying and I have bought a lot of baby warmers, sunsets, rechargeable hand warmers and 72-hour heating pads. By the way, during the renovation, I also asked the masters to install a chimney chute for the fireplace just in case. You can't go wrong with surveillance in front of your home. I also ordered 300 cases of instant noodles, 200 cases of self-heating hot pots, 50 cases of snacks, 30 cases of compressed cookies, 12 cases of sausages, 10 cases of halogen products, 500 buckets of barrels of water, 100 cases of bottled water, 200 sacks of rice, a meal of flour. I bought all the food that can be kept for a long time. If I can't put it in the house, I would like to empty the supermarket. In addition, I also bought a number of seeds, a number of seasonings, a number of daily necessities, a number of cat litter. I can't remember what I bought at the end of the day, and I'm too tired to move. 5. Time flew by, and after things were pretty much filled up, I picked up my parents as well. I'm ashamed to say that they wouldn't have believed me if I had told them that the end of the world was coming. So the reason I picked up my parents was that I was getting married. Ajie's parents are always traveling abroad on business, and it's too late to call them back now. Ajie called for a long time, 1,000 instructions before hanging up. Mom and Dad and Ajie's sitting together, to be honest, is still a bit awkward. Ajie's a hard-to-drink tea. My mother rubbed her hands together. Mian is still young, only 25 years old, a little early. It's not too early, uncle and auntie. I want to settle down with Mian soon. My father laughed a little too hard. As expected, I went home and was educated by my dad for being irresponsible with my life for the whole night. Early the next morning, we lied to my parents that we were going to pick out a wedding dress so that they could stay longer. Looking at my mom's occasional displays of reluctance, I secretly resolved that I must not disappoint my cousin's kind reminder, and I must keep all the people I care about alive. The post-apocalyptic world is scary. I can only protect my family. 6. It's going to start cooling down. I was busy as hell, purchasing supplies to fortify the underground fortress while dealing with my parents' inquiries about marriage matters. The family had replaced everything that could be replaced with anti-freeze stuff, and the credit cards were maxed out several times. I was still a bit uneasy, and I had another group of renovation workers check out the third underground level to make sure no corners were cut. I asked this group of workers to help me reinforce the surrounding rock and soil bodies to ensure that if other disasters occurred unexpectedly, they would not result in us being buried underground. Just the house renovation had cost me all my savings. I sold my beloved Mini and my recently purchased apartment, as well as many of the luxury bags and clothes that I had bought through my teeth, and took out a large loan to buy other supplies. I don't think I'll be able to use the money in the future anyway, and even the most expensive bag isn't as valuable as a down jacket. G also gave me all the money he had saved up over the years. The second before the money came, he didn't tell me anything. I was surprised and touched. He was the only man who let me fool around and believed every word I said unconditionally. Even if the end of the world sounded so outrageous, he was willing to give me total trust. During this time, the food hoard had filled up the first floor, and I thought the house I rented was already very big, but it always felt far from enough. I bought some more food that could be stored for a long time one after another, and even bought a lot of wine, so that if the temperature was really low, the wine could also protect me from the cold. I also stocked up on a lot of meat, which can be frozen at low temperatures and has a long shelf life. When I did all these, only G and I were involved. We couldn't let our parents know about these things too early. The older generation is conservative and will definitely not be able to accept it. 7. When we were almost ready, the day before the end of the world, G accompanied me to F's house to look at the diamond ring. G, why do you want to buy a diamond ring at this time? I was puzzled. To convince your parents that we are really getting married. G shook his cell phone, revealing 2 small tiger teeth. I've already explained the situation to my parents and pulled a group together for all of us to report our trip to buy a diamond ring. My parents will fully cooperate. So that's how it is. Entering the mall, G thoughtfully bought me a cup of hot cocoa. Now that the weather is getting cooler and cooler, it's going to be hard to have a sip of hot cocoa in the future, so I need to have a few more sips. After drinking the hot cocoa, we went to the diamond ring counter, and I couldn't open my eyes. Although the advertisement slogan, "Diamonds are forever, one will last forever," is all hype, honestly, no girl can resist a diamond ring, especially a wedding ring from her favorite man. I couldn't take my eyes off a diamond ring with a regular 3-dimensional cut for a long time. Absolutely beautiful was the word I used to describe the ring. The lady at the counter seemed to recognize how much I liked the ring, so she took it out and explained to me the origins of the ring. Behind every diamond ring, there is a romantic love story, and our concept is to use this romance to guard the next pair of you who get romantic. I listened with rapt attention, and after the counter girl finished her speech thoroughly, I was a bit embarrassed that I was so mesmerized by what I heard that I thought I was actually going to buy a diamond ring. I looked at G awkwardly. Let's think about it and get in touch if we need to. G spoke without changing his face. The counter girl didn't lose any of her temper either, bowed 45 degrees and escorted us out of the store. 8. I got out of the door and a wave of pee hit me. Oops, too much hot cocoa. G, I need to use the restroom, wait here for me. I darted away and ran back as fast as I could after solving it. I saw G from afar looking at the hot pot restaurant across the street and thought, with a faint smile on his lips, I caught you. You're smiling towards the hot pot store. You want to eat hot pot. I pretended to wipe his drool. Given that you transferred all your personal money to me, this meal is on me, you don't have to be too touched. G looked at me like a fool. I directly ignored his expression and dragged him towards the hot pot restaurant. I just ignored his expression and dragged him to the hot pot restaurant. Men love to save face, I understand. In the end, the bill was settled by G. I was very angry. He coaxed me all the way, before I shouted out that sentence, how do you still have private money? We smiled at each other and spent the last time buying a whole tricycle at the nearby wholesale market. In addition to food, there were toothbrushes, toothpaste, sanitary napkins, dishes, pots and pans. It was the last day, and there was no need to avoid anything, so I asked the driver to bring the car to the door of the house. My parents had been waiting at the door for a long time, and they were dumbfounded at the sight of a car full of stuff. Are you guys going to run away? My mom was stunned. The porter next to her was amused. I didn't say anything, I just supervised the movers as they moved the stuff to the house one by one. It was only after the last item was moved, the bill settled, and the masters drove away, that I told my parents the truth. Mom and Dad, the end times are coming. Maybe you don't believe it, but I definitely won't lie to you. I spent half an hour explaining to them. After listening, Mom and Dad looked grave and didn't say a word. 9. How is your uncle's family? My father asked me. A man in his 50s, his voice was a little shaky at this moment. My mom and dad were childhood friends, and my uncle and my dad were also childhood friends, but they didn't have much contact and they grew up because they were busy with work. Cousin says they found a safe house. Don't worry, the disaster will pass and we'll all be fine. We made several trips together to carry the stuff, and then I simply went to the basement and fetched the cart, and Mom and Dad helped us move it into the car while G and I carried the supplies down to the basement. After it was all done, the four of us sat in the lobby of my newly rented villa looking at each other. Your cousin isn't a reckless kid, so it's not too far-fetched, Dad said with a grave expression. Will the end times really come? My mom was still not convinced. No one took my mom's words. Everyone's expression was ugly. No one wants the end of the world to come, but what if it's true? And how to prove it's not true? Daddy, you go get the car now, we're going to the 24-hour convenience store. My mom suddenly stood up, startling us. Okay, we have to work with the kids, too. We can't just sit back and enjoy it. Let's have some unclean takeout tonight and celebrate New Year's Eve as a family. Dad got up and walked outside. Mom and Dad, don't go out. I anxiously tried to call them back, but was stopped by G. Take care of Mion, wait for us two to come back. We don't go out to buy something in our heart. After my dad instructed a G, he just closed the door. 10. Mion, G advised me, Mom and Dad can't be bothered. They thought we were getting married, and each of them instructed us for a long time. They are feeling guilty for delaying our business, which is why they went out, wanting to do their best to help us get enough things, but also to make their own peace of mind. But the end times are coming soon, I'm so worried. Gee, I'm so scared. My body trembled uncontrollably. The word end times was too far away from me. I had only read and heard about it in novels. I had never thought that it would really happen to me in the era I was living in. Just like that, I had been sitting in the doorway, waiting for my parents to come back, and G sat with me. We talked about our childhood, our first acquaintance, our relationship experiences, and our studies. We also talked about the fact that Aji had an annoying guy who was better than him in every way except that he was harder looking than him and not as good at school, and about how we had been scolded by our parents since we were kids. G, I sniffled and couldn't help but hug my arms tighter. Do you feel a little cold? G didn't say anything and looked up at the sky. I followed. There's no moon today, but the sky is still bright, the kind of sky that doesn't need streetlights to illuminate it. It's so red. When did the sky turn dark red? I looked at G in dismay. Is this going to snow? G nodded, looking at how red the sky was, and said, I guess the snow won't be small. My inner turmoil went through the roof as a snowflake landed on my palm. Mom and Dad haven't come back yet. Don't be afraid. G finally couldn't keep his sanity either. His hands were shaking a little. It's okay. It's going to be okay. I'm going to find them. I broke away from G. 11. Don't worry, I'll go with you. It's not cold yet. It'll be fine. I felt the cold sweat on his palms. We looked at each other and walked towards G's car. Tick-tock. A Jeep and a big truck drove by side, and on the passenger seat of the Jeep, my mom was waving at us. I rushed to meet her and jumped into my mom's arms in a flash. This kid, we were only gone for a total of 4 hours. Why is it like we haven't seen each other for a year? My mother helped me wipe away my tears. This kid, there's something wrong with his brain. We have to drive slower when it snows. Who's going to take care of you two if something happens? Look at how red the sky is. Father is really a man who doesn't know how to stir up emotions. Brother, don't talk about your daughter. I'm just worried for you too. It's snowing heavily. I think it's going to change the weather. Winter is coming. 3 or 4 workers came down from the big truck and started to carry the materials from the truck. When everything was finished, my father gave the movers a large sum of money. After they left, my father opened the trunk again, and inside were all kinds of snacks, cosmetics, toys, poker, mahjong, flying chess, and even 3 kingdoms. I was dumbfounded and picked up the 3 kingdoms, and realized that my father averted his gaze unnaturally. Seeing everyone looking at him, my father blushed and said, "Didn't you love to play as a child? It's just as well that I'm taking my annual vacation and playing with you when I'm bored." Our family started to get busy. The man moved the big things, the woman moved the small things, and the atmosphere was warm and harmonious. The atmosphere was warm and cozy. We all felt warm and cozy in our hearts, and as long as we were together, we wouldn't be afraid of any difficulties. 12. We were busy from midnight to 7 a.m. and the snowflakes turned from stars to goose feather snow in 2 hours. Aji's parents called him and told him that everything was safe, food and other supplies were sufficient, and talked for a while before hanging up. Mom and Dad and I watched through the windows of the villa as the snow grew heavier in the sky and thicker on the ground. The snowflakes changed from the size of a coin at the beginning to the size of a pulsating bottle cap later, and then even as big as a child's fist. My parents said that they had lived for more than 50 years and it was the first time they had seen such a large amount of snow. Our family picked a room on the 3rd floor of the villa. It's not too cold yet. There is no need to live in the basement. We don't want to live underground as a last resort. Originally, Mom and Dad had agreed to buy supplies in the middle of the night to come back with a little takeout. I do not know how they discussed on the road, directly changed their minds, went to the 24-hour seasonal fruit and vegetable store to buy a bunch of ingredients, to give AJ a big show. To my surprise, my mom was actually the one who gave my dad a hand, and my dad was the chef. I looked at my parents proudly and said to G, "You have to cook for me from now on, okay?" "Of course, no problem." G gave me a salute. Not long after, the rich aroma of delicious dishes were brought up on a plate. My father today, a good day, made roasted kidney beans, cola chicken wings, stewed prawns, beer stewed carp, seaweed and egg flour soup. All of these dishes are AJ's favorites. "Dad, why isn't there my favorite big elbow?" I muttered in dissatisfaction. "Stinky girl, you've gained so much weight. Look at how skinny G is. He's like a bamboo pole at 5 feet 9 inches. Unlike you, you're like a bean." Dad's disgusting words made the atmosphere at the dinner table lively all of a sudden. I was more than willing to agree. "Dad, I'm 160 centimeters tall and weigh 82 grams. I'm 160 centimeters tall and weigh 82 kilograms. Where did I get fat? Let's eat, let's eat." G put a tender and fat cola chicken wing into my bowl, and I hurriedly blocked my mouth with the chicken wing. Mom and Dad exchanged glances and started eating. Dad's cooking was especially good today. 13. After I had my fill, I subconsciously looked out the window again. The snow was already as thick as my ankles, and it wasn't stopping. I was a little uneasy and suggested we all go to the basement to sleep. Mom and Dad didn't think it was too cold. They chose a bedroom and went back inside to get ready for a good night's sleep after a busy night. I didn't want to live alone if either Mom, Dad, or G were gone. If I were to freeze to death in one night, I would have to die with the person I love the most. G and I went back to our room as well. Before pulling the curtains, I glanced at the sky again. It seemed to be getting redder and redder. Next door to us was a large farmer's market. Yelling was going on and on. Maybe everyone was stocking up. After all, with all this snow, surely everyone knew it was going to cool down soon, and who wants to go out and buy groceries every day on such a cold day? Outside, children are already coming out to have snowball fights and build snowmen. This is childishness. I closed the curtains. When I woke up, the house was warm because the air conditioner was on, and the Wi-Fi network was still working. The news said that heating will start tomorrow in the city. More news reports that today there was a sudden heavy to heavy snowfall in several areas, with light to moderate snowfall in localized areas, the largest snowfall ever recorded in our country. The news urges all citizens to stay off the streets as much as possible if they can, and to stay out as much as possible if they can. I pulled back the curtains and opened the window slightly a crack. Hiss, it's cold. I shivered and hurriedly closed the window. 14. My parents were up early and were playing with their phones at the table with gusto, and there was hot white porridge and small dishes on the table. G and I went to the table. Each of us got a bowl of congee, and ate it with great relish with the small dishes. I glanced at the temperature on the wall. The room temperature was still 26 degrees Celsius, and the air conditioner was working normally. The air conditioner was working properly. Although the underfloor heating hadn't come on yet, it was good to see that the electricity hadn't been cut off. If you ask me, you kids are so superstitious. We don't believe in the end times, but you take it so seriously. Now the snow is closing the roads, and the two youngsters will have to stay together with us two old ones. Dad glanced at me and said, "Yu-cheng, don't take me with you. You can go wherever you like." My mom was not happy. After dinner, my mom and dad went for a walk in the neighborhood, fully dressed despite our discouragement. When they came back, my mom said with a look of contempt, "Men in their 50s nowadays can't keep up with their physical strength, and they can't walk as fast as I can." I saw my father panting and said, "You can eat without thinking, but you can't talk without thinking." Gee, and I looked at each other helplessly and smiled. Our parents were living more vigorously than we were. On the third day, Gee started to cook. The flavor was not bad. I praised it heartily. This time, we were added to the after-dinner exercise, and the whole family came out for a nice walk. The temperature outside isn't too low. The cell phone says it's -10 degrees Celsius today. My parents are back to work, going to work from 9 to 5 as usual, and the days are quiet and comfortable. The heating is normal, no need to turn on the air conditioner, and it's a bit hot to wear half-sleeve clothes at home. Running became a tradition in our house, and we all cherished the time we spent walking because we didn't know which day we wouldn't be able to get out of the house. The sky was still very red, and it snowed for 4 days in a row, but only the first day was very heavy, and then it decreased daily. Today is the 5th day and the snow has finally stopped. The temperature in the villa is stabilizing at 28 degrees Celsius. The heating is really good this year. The internet is still open, and while nothing much has changed in our city, there are still areas across the country that keep getting caught in blizzards. This massive and unusual snowfall is unprecedented, and the state has named it the La Nina blizzard season. In the blink of an eye, 2 weeks went by, and there were 14 straight days of dark red skies outside, and the sun never came out again, as if it never existed. 15. I don't know why, but it's gotten colder since the snow stopped falling that day. Now when we go out for a run, we have to be armed with scarves and masks. There are fewer and fewer pedestrians out there. All of them don't want to go out because it's too cold. A lot has happened in the past 2 weeks, and since it's not particularly cold, we've stocked up on a lot more fresh veggies at home. As the temperature gets colder and colder, prices are getting higher and higher. Everyone is stocking up for the winter. No one wants to go out, and the vendors are making a killing. Mom and Dad used their savings to stock up on a whole lot more food and bought a lot of medicines that we didn't stock up on. As the days go by, it's getting cooler every day, and the temperature in the house is only 28 degrees Celsius with the air conditioner. There are few pedestrians and vehicles outside, and the kids who were out for a snowball fight a while ago have stopped going out. The neighborhood homeowners group is full of complaints, and people are talking about why it's so cold this year. After all, we're in a wealthy neighborhood with excellent heating and security, and for now, as long as we don't go out, we can maintain the status quo. On the internet, we learned about other areas where outdoor work has been called off completely in certain areas because of the persistent cold temperatures. Certain high-latitude areas of the country have begun to experience power shortages and are temporarily out of contact with the outside world. Because of the suddenness of the disaster, many people without heating equipment have had to go to shelters. There is one not far from my house, and it is full of police cars and ambulances. From the 3rd floor of the villa, you can just see the entrance to the shelter, and the noise of the crowd can't be completely blocked out even with the soundproof walls. Ambulances had been dispatched to every hospital, and paramedics, wearing thick down coats, were waiting near the evacuation point. The hospitals were also overcrowded, but fortunately, our neighborhood is quite safe. Every family has stocked up on food, the power supply and heating are normal, and there is no need to go out and evacuate. 16. And so, another week passed, and today it was extra cold outside, and even the temperature in the house had dropped. Why is it a bit cold? I rubbed my hands together and wrapped the blanket tightly. G looked at the room temperature. It was 21 degrees Celsius. He then turned on the air conditioner. Mom and Dad can't go to work again, and except for the heating staff, no one else is allowed to go out to work unless it's necessary. We can't rely on the heating alone to keep our house warm anymore, and although the heating unit is still holding up, it's not as effective as it could be. In just 2 weeks, the sea has frozen over in the coastal city of S. the glass in a high-rise building in Z has shattered due to the extremely low temperatures, and the snow has never stopped falling in F, reaching a thickness of more than an adult's height. This is an unprecedented catastrophe. The more windy and sunny it is before the catastrophe, the more shocking the devastation will be after it comes. There are already so many people driving away from the neighborhood today, and while the heating is holding up, there's probably not much food left in the house. The neighborhood owners group is also particularly lively. Some people who left said that the so-called shelter environment is very poor, although warm, but crowded, can only sleep on the floor of the shopping mall, and every day to eat the distribution of compressed cookies. The misery is unbearable. Some people are still holding their ground, feeling that it's just a heavy snowfall. There's no need to take it seriously, just buy more food. 17. A message from the owners group caught my attention. Who has fever-reducing medicine at home? My child has a fever, save me. I remembered the children who had a playful snowball fight a while ago, and wondered if it was one of them. With some reluctance, I chatted privately with that homeowner and asked for the building number, then sent a box of fever-reducing medicine and some food to her house with G. The door was opened by a couple. The family looked at the supplies in our hands with surprise and closed the door without saying a word of thanks. G and I looked at each other and smiled helplessly. It seemed that our kindness was not appreciated by others. Later that child's fever went down. The owner thanked us and politely asked us if there was any more food we could share with them. I politely replied that we didn't have many supplies left, and the ones we did have were all bought on the spot, and urged them to stock up on some, and left it at that. That family didn't send any more WeChat either. Looking at the cell phone chat page, I was a little stunned. Did I do something wrong? Under the post-apocalyptic world, will exposing the supplies bring us danger? A G's expression is also a little gloomy. We agreed that in the future, whoever needs help again, we will just ignore it, or do not bring trouble to the family. At the dinner table, we, who were able to talk and laugh a few days ago, could only brush our cell phone microblogging without a word now, keeping an eye on the low-temperature disaster situation around the world at all times. In a month, the outdoor temperature in our city has dropped to minus 40 degrees Celsius. What a concept. My dad handed us his cell phone. If you stay outside for a couple of hours, you'll pass out from the cold, my mom exclaimed. The first floor of the villa was no longer fit for human beings, and I was freezing even if I stayed there for one more minute. But luckily the heating could barely hold out. We discussed it and moved all the supplies from the ground floor to the first floor. Calculating that there should be enough food for a month or so, we planned to move to the relatively safe and warm basement once the supplies were completely depleted. 18. It's getting cold again today. The temperature is still dropping and it's getting colder and colder as it's already minus 48 degrees Celsius outside. The snow started to fall again, at first lightly, but slowly turning into goose feather snow. Finally, the owners of the neighborhood went to the shelters one after another, and one after another they drove out. The family I rescued last time had not yet left, but they sent me another WeChat. Please help us. Our family's food is at the bottom of the barrel, and our children will starve to death if they don't eat. I wanted to ignore it, but my mom saw the cell phone message. Mian, we can't do this. The food in our house won't last a lifetime. Don't be too stingy. Give some to others. Otherwise, what about the children? I understood my mom, but when I put it to my attention that it wasn't the first time their family had offered me, it's better not to stir up trouble, now that we are in such a tense situation. If others know that our family has such a rich stockpile of supplies, we can't guarantee that it will bring trouble. My dad spoke up at this time. Since my dad had said so, my mom could only nod her head in a hesitant manner. I could see my mom's difficulty and intolerance, so I could only say, Mom, it's so cold outside right now, and I don't want to go out. But to be honest, isn't it also possible to buy food outside? It just depends on whether or not people are willing to travel on snowy days. We have supplies, so we're not willing. They don't have supplies, so why don't they rely on themselves instead of begging toward us? With that said, my mom completely dismissed the idea of giving them supplies, and I didn't respond to any more messages from that family. 19. We stayed in the villa for more than half a month, but the family didn't send me any more messages. Perhaps they couldn't take it anymore and went to a shelter. Gradually, I also left them behind. Outside, the temperature has reached minus 56 degrees Celsius. The homeowners group is complaining every day that they can't get food anymore, and what they can get costs outrageous sky-high prices. We're a wealthy neighborhood, so some people have started trading their cars for a bag of rice, others for 2 loaves of bread with their name tags, but these messages have gone unanswered. The food reserves above ground are estimated to be only enough for half a month, and after that we'll have to move underground. The air conditioning in the house is only 16 degrees Celsius, and the heating is getting worse and worse. As every household began to run out of food, other homeowners in the neighborhood began to prepare to go to the shelters. Shelters not opening. A homeowner in the neighborhood posted a picture of a locked mall. The one in the S zone is also closed. Another homeowner also posted a photo. What's the situation? I've been to all the Z zones, and the shelters aren't open. I've been to all the Z zones, and the shelters aren't open. I've burned up the gas in my car. Another owner cursed in his voice. I casually clicked on the large picture and found at the second floor of the shopping mall used as a shelter was densely packed with people, but the first floor was closed. The shelter was overcrowded and could not afford to have new people enter now. I was brushing my cell phone owners group to see the situation. Suddenly a loud noise startled us. It was the sound of glass breaking. We looked in the direction the sound came from, and it was the glass of the mall next door that was serving as a shelter that had been smashed. People and cars were gathering by the mall, and the traffic police couldn't control the scene anymore. The dense crowd pushed into the shelter, and the cars directly broke the temporary fence of the parking lot and rushed into the underground parking lot. For a while the alarm continued. A police car quickly arrived, blocking the parking lot door. But people were forced to rush where to care about that. Directly rushed to the police car. The car broke down. People get out of the car, on foot to the underground parking lot. The scene into chaos. 20. This is crazy. I couldn't help but exclaim. This kind of scene makes people crazy. Dad looked serious. There wasn't much food left above ground, but we weren't scared because there was a huge store of supplies underground, so there was nothing to be afraid of. Bang! It was a gunshot. Someone shot. Dad rushed to close the curtains so fast that I didn't have time to see what happened next. In just one night, the world had changed. It wasn't just the natural disasters that were scary, but also the hearts of the people. It's hard to imagine just how crazy people will go without the constraints of the law under the end times. Mian, look at the owners group. Hearing my mom's words, I opened my cell phone. B03 There are supplies. I asked her for them before and she didn't give them to me at all. Now we have to unite and go to their house to find supplies so we can survive. What gives these selfish people the right to live? The ones who spoke were the family of 3 that I had helped before. I laughed coldly and thought to myself that people's hearts are hard to read. I had helped them, and then just by not helping anymore, they were able to be so gracious. Can't drag this out any longer. I'll leave the supplies above ground for them. I've installed cameras in the house. Turn off the air conditioner, and take the remote control with me. Now let's go underground and hide. Mom and Dad looked at each other and simply packed up. We hurried to the first floor of the villa, and someone had already started to smash the door, one after another, and there were even sounds of gunshots being fired. Without looking back, we went to the basement. I used the key to open the first tempered door of the basement, then used my fingerprints to open the second door, and finally the third, and then unlocked all the doors. Mom and Dad looked dumbfounded. This grenade can't open it, right? That's a must. This is solid bulletproof grade. Looking at my mom's surprised expression, I was very proud. 21. When I entered the basement, the temperature was really different from that of the outdoor area. Although it was also a bit cool, it was the kind of coolness of a basement rather than the cold. Through this lesson, I finally realized to what extent the human heart can be sinister. The ground that was originally able to hold out for a while is no longer livable. The first and second basement floors all serve to store supplies, and the third floor is where we rest. I grabbed a bunch of baby warmers and 6 charged hand warmers in my hand. I handed the foot warmers to G, who reluctantly followed me at the back to act as a laborer. We arrived at the third floor, which had 6 rooms, 4 for supplies, and the other 2 were bedrooms where we rested. The living room was also piled with supplies, and even the kitchen, where cooking was not delayed, was filled with rice and noodles. The third basement floor was indeed the warmest floor, and with all the messy protective measures I had made, I even felt that the temperature here was as cozy as autumn. The La Nina end times had just kicked off, and our family had to move from above ground to underground because of that ungrateful family, so if anything else went wrong, there would be no way back at all. I don't know if the temperature will continue to drop in the coming days, but with the current momentum, it's not far from minus 60 degrees Celsius. Today's staple food can only eat noodles. Fresh fruits and vegetables are upstairs, now I guess they have all been snatched up. I opened the surveillance on my cell phone and realized that the front door of our house had been broken and there was an influx of people, some with guns and some with axes. They were cursing and fighting over the distribution of supplies on the first floor. I saw that the family that betrayed me was in there, even the children came. The boy I had rescued was quietly hiding the groceries my father had bought in his clothes. It was so irritating to watch, even though our family didn't lack those supplies. 22. I'm the one who notified everyone to come and get the supplies. I have the right to distribute the supplies. Our family will take 40%, and you can split the remaining 60% amongst yourselves. The woman proudly walked over to the supplies to carry them, but she was pushed down in one fell swoop by a large, muscular man with a big waist. Bitch, don't think I don't know how you knew his family had the supplies. That little girl's family gave you medicine and you betrayed them. This is the supplies I found. What would you know without me? The woman lunged at the supplies in a near frenzy. Yuck. A woman came up and slapped her. Ungrateful thing. We'll take his family supplies and help them clean up after you as a good deed. I'm sure the owner won't blame us. Don't touch my family's supplies. The kid pounced on him, but was kicked away by a man and hit his head on the wall without moving. Son, Jiang Daong, what are you looking at? Go. The woman let out a heart-rending scream, pounced on her son, touched his breath, and said viciously to her husband. After all, 2 fists can't beat 4 hands. The family was quickly subdued. The woman was even more beaten up, got nothing, and ran away in disgrace. Self-inflicted. I looked at what was happening in the surveillance and sneered. There's a door here. The group upstairs had spotted the door to our basement, and I was in a bad way. However, they hacked at it with axes and slammed it with hammers, but they didn't shake the door one bit. What kind of broken door? How come it won't open? The muscular man in the lead cursed. That family must be hiding down there. Let's open the door. There must be a lot of supplies down there. Unfortunately, after half an hour of work, the first door to our basement was still standing firm, with only a few small breaks. This is a super thick bulletproof door. Grenades can't even break it, just like you guys. I smiled contemptuously on this end of the monitor. This one seems warmer than ours. We'll station ourselves here, find a way to open the basement door, and get all the food out of the family. I don't know who said that, but the group upstairs agreed, and the uninvited guests stayed here. 23. I watched their every move on the security cameras. Every day they would turn around at the basement door and try to figure out how to open it, but unfortunately every day they failed. As time went on and there wasn't much left of the supplies to eat, they started to get cranky. The first big fight they had was a week into their stay, when there was a disagreement over the distribution of the supplies because of how little was left, and the muscular man in charge got into a big fight with a couple of men who were trying to grab the supplies. All the while I was in front of my cell phone screen chewing on instant noodles. Finally, after a gunshot, the man who wanted to grab the supplies fell in front of the muscle man. I screamed out in shock, drawing my parents and G over. They watched the footage of what was happening on the monitor as the men grabbing the supplies fell one by one. Now there are supplies. The muscular man smiled an eerie smile. With a fit of dry heaving, I turned to the restroom and threw up. The temperature in the basement didn't change much over the next few days. It was still warm and cozy. But I was so shocked by the muscular man's actions that I had a fever the next day. My father boiled hot water for me, my mother rinsed out my medicine, and G was even busier, having to make me instant noodles every day, watch the surveillance to keep an eye out for their movements, and change the hot towel on my forehead. Even though I was sick, I still cared about what was going on outside, but G said he wouldn't let me watch it anymore, and instead he dictated it to me every day. There are only 3 women and 1 man left now. Today there are only 2 women and 1 man. There's only 1 man today. The muscular man went out in the morning, and when he came back in the afternoon, he brought back the family of 3 that we delivered medicine to earlier and a lot of supplies. Every day, G would tell me what had happened today, and the situation was getting more appalling by the day. There was also that family of 3, who actually hadn't left yet. The supplies that the muscular man had brought were probably from this family of 3. It was obvious that they had the supplies, but they had come to loot ours. They had it coming, G said. I nodded in silence. 24. After a month, I could get out of bed. With nothing else to do, I watched the surveillance again. The muscular man had gotten a grenade from somewhere and was about to blow the door open. Mom and Dad. G. I called them to look at the surveillance footage. The man had already backed up a long way, ready to blow open the door to my basement, and on the eve of the grenade about to explode, he spotted the surveillance. "When I get in there, I'm going to have your family's ass." The muscular man yelled viciously at the surveillance and then quickly ran off. There was a loud bang and I felt my house shake. The glass of the surveillance camera had been blown up. Luckily I could see the picture. The first gate had been broken, but unfortunately it wasn't powerful enough. There were 2 more gates. The man roared in impotent rage and brought up his axe like a madman and slashed at the doors. We were all shocked and secretly thankful that the doors were strong enough. "We're in the basement now, it's safe here. Mion, don't worry." Mom patted my hand comfortingly. "Well, I hope so." I held Mom's trembling hands back. "The food we hoarded is probably enough for a few of us to eat until the end of time, so we don't have to worry too much. But since it's underground, it's a way to live and a way to die, so if something unexpected happens, we'll probably all die." We coincidentally looked at the monitoring of the nearly out-of-control muscle man. "If my door is a little more fragile." After another month the heating unit broke down completely, but for some reason the electricity and internet stayed on. Through the surveillance, I saw that the man had eaten all the supplies. He was exhausted, the temperature in the house had reached -30°C, and he needed to be fully clothed to curl up on the bed. I guess in a couple of days he will be gone. 25. Outside, the temperature has reached an outrageous -65°C. It's hard to imagine that in just a few short months, the temperature has hit rock bottom and is even continuing to fall. For the first time, I felt that human beings were so small in front of nature. I imagined zombie outbreaks, aliens attacking the earth, and every post-apocalyptic movie imaginable. At that time, I only found it exciting, but when disaster really struck, I could only instinctively feel fear and dread. The only thing we could do was to hide in this small underground space, to sit and eat, or to sit and wait for death. In any case we had to live longer. The next few days didn't go well for us. Every day we had to keep a constant eye on the man outside. Sometimes I would wake up suddenly when I was sleeping. After 2 more days, I saw through the security camera that the man had been lying on the bed for a day without moving, without eating, without drinking, and without turning over. Perhaps he had. The temperature has been dropping regularly, each day 3 or 4 degrees lower than the day before. And today it has gone from -65°C to -68°C. The internet and electricity have been normal, which makes me wonder, my house is solar powered automatically. It's normal to have electricity, what about the internet? The owner's group manager sent out a message. I don't know how many owners are still in our neighborhood, but let's be united. I'm in B03 now. There are still a lot of supplies here. If you need them, you can come over to pick them up. B03 is not my home. I rolled over and got up, opened the monitor. Is the muscle man sent a message? He did not die. I used G's cell phone, changed his name and avatar, and asked him in the group, why do you still have a network? Hello owners, our neighborhood is solar independent power heating. As long as within the neighborhood can be covered, our property is committed to give you the best experience. I had a nasty chill inside. It was hard to imagine how someone as menacing as Muscle Man could type those words. Too scary, really too scary. Is this the people under the end times? 26. I tried to calm my thumping heart, taking deep breaths to steady my mind. Luckily we were in the basement where it was warm and we didn't have to worry about food. So, we've been at peace with each other for a month now, and the cooling has leveled off, but there's not much room for it to go down anytime soon. It's now -89°C outside, so it's safe to say that a person would instantly freeze if they were to expose their skin to the outside world. We've got a layer of frost on the door of our house. Muscle Man has run out of food and no one is coming to the door anymore, and he is also starving, thin and depressed. Because of the natural disaster, I had less and less appetite, and I lost a lot of weight with it. Mom felt sorry for me and told me to eat more Mion. What if we get through it and there are zombies again? We still have to rely on you and G to fight the zombies. I forced a smile and started eating. I needed to stay alive to watch over everyone I cared about. I had to stay alive. On this day, I saw Muscle Man smile slightly towards the monitor and walk up to the rooftop. I said something bad and hurriedly switched the surveillance camera. The viewpoint came to the rooftop, only to see the man open the rooftop on the mounted. After destroying our generator, he laughed at the monitor. I won't survive, but you guys will have to freeze to death too, so let's die together, ha 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 ha. Slowly, he laid down on the rooftop and closed his eyes and didn't move. The internet and electricity were not working this day, and the basement became colder and colder without air conditioning. What to do? At this rate, it will definitely affect the third basement floor where we are, and the solar generator is still destroyed. Without internet and electricity, our house was plunged into darkness, and I got a light from the warehouse, and the family sat in the living room, not knowing what to do. 27. We have a backup solar generator at home, but I don't know how to use it. It's in the room on the rooftop. I spoke up. Dad can fix it. Don't forget that's how I got my start. Dad patted me on the shoulder. But I tried to stop it, but Dad interrupted me. Without electricity, there's no air conditioning, and without heat, we can't even keep our basics warm. How are we supposed to live? Dad looked serious. I was silent. It was true, but what if we were in danger when we got out? Without the sound of electrical appliances working, we could only hear each other breathing. The house was now terribly silent. I was kicking myself. If I had planned better and put a lock on the solar generator as well, wouldn't the power have been cut off? I subconsciously looked sideways at G, who shook his head. Uncle, the power is off now. -80 degrees is actually okay. The highest record in M country is to sleep in a snow house at -80 degrees. I agree with Uncle to go out. I looked at G in disbelief. Why would he say something like that? Why did he say that? Only if you bring me along, we can help each other out. I don't agree. I objected strongly. Neither of you can go. What if Muscle Man isn't dead? What if someone new breaks in? What if? Me on, there's no such thing as a, what if, trust us. Under G's repeated insistence, I compromised. Unable to talk him out of it, I had no choice but to hang my head and help them change their clothes, and find a bunch of warm patches to put in their clothes, gloves, and shoes. Mother didn't say a word either, wrapping her arms around Father and patting G's shoulder lovingly on her way out. Wait, I called out to them, my hands not idle as I began to put warm patches and warm babies on myself. I'll come along. If you don't agree, I'll go outside and freeze to death on my own. In the end, we became a threesome. 28. It's so cold outside. The cold air is like a sharp blade into your clothes. Your skin is raw. The door to the first floor had been damaged to bits and pieces, and we found a cupboard to hold against the leak. It didn't help much, but it carried the wind a bit. When we came to the third floor, it was a lot warmer, and although we were still shivering from the cold, it was much better than the first floor. Only 5 minutes out, my eyes started to water uncontrollably and my throat started to dry out from the cold. It was so cold. We quickened our pace and opened the door to the rooftop. It was really cold. It's 89 degrees below zero, a temperature I can't even think of. I helped my father with the suitcase, G, and my father switched the new solar generator with the old one, and my father had to work on it for a while before he finished. I purposely took a lock up and closed the door behind me and locked it to make sure no one could get in later. Just about to go downstairs, I saw a slightly arched small snow bag, that is the body of the Muscle Man. Just as I froze, there was a loud crash from downstairs, and we looked down from the rooftop to see a group of people from who knows where, banging on the lockers like crazy, led by a woman. She saw us. The woman was big and fierce. Get them. She laughed evilly, a smile that squeezed her face so full of horizontal flesh that it made my scalp tingle. I mockingly gave her the middle finger, causing the woman to rush over and rely on brute force to smash the locker right open. A large number of people rushed towards the rooftop in a huge crowd. What should we do? Father asked me. What to do? Run. The first floor, they did not leave people. We go from the fire escape and then around back to the basement. With that, I dragged G and Dad downstairs in a hurry. The cold wind hit my face. My eyes were already blurred with tears and I couldn't see the road anymore, but we couldn't stop. Once we stopped and they caught up with us, the consequences were unimaginable. 29. The interior was a spiral staircase and the exterior was a straight staircase. We got downstairs just as they did. When I opened the basement door, the woman was leading a large group down to the first floor. Bitch, you'll be sorry when you get out. The woman kicked the basement door viciously, took some pain and withdrew her foot. We made it back to the third basement level safely and got into the basement. It was so warm. We took off our gloves and realized that our hands were frozen and bruised and we couldn't feel them. So Mom rushed to get us hand warmers and hot water to keep us warm. The electricity came, but the unwanted guests had it again. Although the internet was disconnected and I couldn't see the online messages, the surveillance could send back images by Bluetooth. Where I used to observe muscle men, I now observe evil women. The temperature in the basement is getting lower and lower as the surface temperature drops, and there's no way to maintain a comfortable human temperature anymore. Our house is now barely maintaining around 11 degrees Celsius, which is a bit chilly with 2 layers of clothes on. On the ground, they didn't stay here for long, firstly because it was too cold for us to live here, and secondly because there were not many supplies. I've heard the woman call the men under her command useless countless times. A week later, they left, probably because they didn't think there was any way to open the door to the basement, and when they left, they took a few quilts from my house and put a lock on the basement of my house. Is she the one whose IQ is inversely proportional to her weight? I was speechless. Why would we go out when we have so much to eat? Soon I was slapped in the face. The solar generator finally died an honorable death at 100 degrees below zero. We're out of power again. 30. We can only activate our backup skills and burn the fire. G said calmly. The fireplace at the end of the 3rd basement level was installed by a worker before the end of Mion's life. It was predicted to be used for warmth in today's situation. But what if the top of the chimney is covered with snow and solid ice? Mom asked. The smoke outlet goes down to the 1st floor, and to avoid that, I reinforced the outlet with a layer of thickened vacuum glass, so that the top can be poked open with a wooden stick. If the ice is not too thick and the snow is not too deep, I can do it with my strength. G continued. It's too dangerous, G. We don't even know what temperature is up there. It's too risky. It's okay, Mion. If we can't use the fireplace anymore, we can still use the hand warmers. If we can't use the hand warmers anymore, we can still use the stickers, so we'll be able to survive. But if we use hand warmers now, when we run out of these supplies in the future, we will really be at the end of our rope. Let's go together. Mion, don't be capricious. This is something a man should do. Father has already started to get dressed. If anything bad happens, I'll use my body to support G. Mom took me by the hand and shook her head at me, then asked me to help G organize his clothes while she helped Dad organize his, putting on baby warmers and sticking on warm patches. But this time, the temperature was 100 degrees below zero, a temperature that no one could bear. They were ready to go. No one said anything, no goodbye, no instructions. Before they left, Mom said to them with suppressed emotions, "Come back early, Mian, and I will make you some hot rice. It won't be good if it gets cold. Just go to the 1st floor. Don't worry, it's fine. We're not that useless." Father wiped his face and waved his hand without looking back. Neither of them dared to look back for fear that if they did, they wouldn't be able to leave. It's time to get active after so long. Father squeezed his knuckles together. Don't you think so, G? Yes. 31. The 2nd basement level, the 1st basement level. I kept switching the surveillance viewpoint. Fortunately, when the renovation of each floor was installed surveillance, my mother was next to me, her eyes firmly fixed on the cell phone screen. The temperature of the 1st floor is already very low. Even wearing 2 down jackets, plastered with warm stickers, 2 people are also freezing and shivering. G brought my dad to the smoke outlet, which was the coldest place. Although I didn't go there myself, I felt that if I stayed there for one more second I would faint. G picked up the wooden stick that was originally placed here, found the reserved slot, and stabbed it as hard as he could. There was a click. Did it work? I asked Mom. She didn't answer. I only saw the image of G shaking his head towards my dad, and immediately after that, the one holding the wooden stick changed to my dad. My dad tried and failed. I don't know what G said to my dad. My dad tapped him on the shoulder, and the 2 of them held the stick together and rhythmically hit the smoke outlet. Wow! A thick pile of ice fell from the smoke outlet straight down to the 3rd floor of the ground, with a shattering echo. It worked! I stood up excitedly as I watched the video. Along with the piercing cold wind drilled in, I saw them quickly leave the 1st floor and run back to the 3rd basement level. I hurriedly greeted them and opened the door. Luckily they were all fine. Yu Cheng, what happened to your hand? While helping G take off his jacket, I looked towards my dad's hands. Both of my dad's hands were frozen blue and purple, and they were shivering slightly. Dad, my tears flowed out uncontrollably. It's okay, daughter, it's okay. My father tried to raise his hand to touch my hair, but his hand could only stay back, unable to make any movement. I cried even harder. My father sighed and said, "Don't cry, child, I'm rather glad. Isn't it good to have one hand for everyone's warmth?" I suddenly reacted and took off G's gloves, and also saw the appalling greenish-purple color. G sheepishly turned his back. "I'm going to burn the fire." My nose was sore, and I hurriedly carried firewood and hay, pulling out a lighter to light the dry wood. A blast of heat filled the room, smoke traveled up the chimney, and the house was illuminated by the firelight. 32. I wasn't much happier. How could I be happy when this warmth had come at the hands of two of my favorite men? Before the warmth could last long, smoke filled our room, and my mother, quick as a flash, extinguished the wood fire that was burning with water and opened the basement door, allowing the smoke to travel upward. The house was once again plunged into darkness. I was completely baffled. What happened? Obviously crashed through the ice. Obviously there's no problem. Looks like we failed after all. A G let out a bitter laugh. We still have so many hand warmers and baby warmers, so we can last for a year and a half without any problems. I'm not going to be able to get a lot more than that, she said. Yes, I have hoarded a lot of supplies. It is true that there is no problem to last a year and a half. But after a year and a half, what if the end of the world isn't over by then? Don't think so much me on. Live in the present. Live in the present. You'll get tired of living like this. Mom shook her head and gave us each 2 hand warmers and 2 foot warmers. Each person has 4 warmers every day when they go to bed, and usually they put 2 warm patches in their down coats and shoes to minimize wear and tear. Luckily when I ordered the electric warmers I had them charged and shipped, or else these would have become useless by now. That night, I tossed and turned with the hand warmers. My palms and feet were warm, and even my limbs were warmed up with them. Perhaps it was too warm, and I fell asleep quickly. 33. The next morning, there was still residual heat from the electric heater in my palm, and the high power really lived up to its name. In fact, it is enough to consume 1 in a night. It is too wasteful to use 2. If we do the math this way, we'll be able to last for another 2 years or so, as long as the temperature doesn't drop even more ridiculously. G is still sleeping. I gently walked out of the bedroom, turned on the flashlight of my cell phone, and saw that my mom was constantly giving her hand a puff of air, and subconsciously put her hand behind her back when she saw the bright light shining over. Mian woke up so early. I quickly stepped forward to pull my mom's hands, which were cold, without a trace of warmth. Mom, how many hand warmers did you use last night? 1. That one stopped warming up in the middle of the night, so I didn't turn it on again when I fell asleep. Mom's eyes unconsciously avoided me. Lies. 1 hand warmer in the sleeve of my down jacket lasted all night, and my palms are still warm. Mom, you're lying. You're not using any of them. I tugged on my mother's hand, letting her feel the warmth of my palm. The noise woke up G and my dad. I quickly went up and tugged on my dad's hand. It was still a little warm. He did use the hand warmer last night. Mom, are you trying to leave all the hand warmers to us and just tough it out yourself? Obviously I want us all to live together. How can you take the liberty? What if I can't find out? Are you going to keep this up? The temperature is getting lower and lower. How long can you hold out? Mom lowered her head at my words, like a child who did something wrong, not daring to look at me. Mom and Dad, if one of us is missing, or if anyone gets sick and is gone because of conserving resources, then I don't want to live either. Calming down, I plan to break down. Mom, didn't you not use the hand warmers last night? I won't use it tonight either. I'll stay with you and not use it. Whenever you figure it out and want to use it, I'll use it. It's Mom's fault. Mom smiled bitterly and actually cried. Mom is useless. Mom just wants you guys to live longer than we live. Mom, I know. I hugged my mom and cried together. Mom will never be like this again. Daughter, Mom you don't use it. It's too cold at night. You won't be able to stand it. I cried even harder when I heard this. Starting tomorrow, Mian, and I will check your hand and foot warmers separately. The daily nightly base depletion is 2, and if we find that you don't use the amount of photoelectricity, we will do the same as you. Later on, we checked my parents' hand warmer quantity without stopping for a day, and when they saw that we were serious, there was nothing they could do but to use it every night. As the days went by, the cell phones ran out of battery and the lights broke one after another. I don't know when, a G developed the habit of writing in a diary, and every day, he would light the lighting to write for a while. We've moved the beds to the master bedroom so that our parents can sleep and keep warm in the same room with us. G and I sleep on one side and my parents on the other. Anyway, wearing several down jackets, the conditions are tough, so you can't ask for too much. We all slept in the same room, and it was really warmer at night. We covered ourselves with layers of quilts and added layers of cushions, and it was a bit of a struggle to get into bed now. Half of the stockpile of hand warmers had been used, and the hope of the end of the apocalypse was getting slimmer and slimmer. My sleep is getting shorter and shorter, and extreme anxiety plagues me chronically. Today, I completely lost sleep. Lying beside my mom saw my abnormalities. Let me go to the living room. I gently followed her toward the living room. Mom handed me the hand warmer in her hand and I shook my head. Mion, Mom knows that you've been under a lot of stress since the end of the world. But Mion, Mom told you that the end of the world will always be death, just that some people come first and some come later. If you're always stressing about these things, then you should have actually started when you were just born. Mom. Emotions that had been suppressed for too long erupted. I hugged my mother and cried in a low voice. I was afraid of waking them who were still sleeping. Mion, be good. Mom and Dad promise to be healthy and stay with you until the end of your life. Mom gently stroked my back, giving me warmth and strength. Only after a long time did I gamely say, you have to do what you say. Okay, after this little episode, I figured out a lot. It's not just the end of the world, as long as I live seriously, full of hope for the world and the country, and if I don't give up on myself, no one can give up on me. The quality of my sleep was improved, although I woke up cold at night more and more often, but I could at least fall asleep. After another 6 months like this, the temperature had dropped to minus 130 degrees, and after reaching this temperature, it did not continue to drop. Ding! The sound of the air conditioner running. I subconsciously glanced at the air conditioner and realized that it had actually started working. What's going on? Is the temperature rising again? Or is the power restored? Does that mean the end times are over? I screamed out in surprise, and everyone noticed the functioning air conditioner, and immediately after that, the lights in the living room went on. The power was restored. I hurriedly charged my cell phone and turned it on, and the cell phone signal was actually restored. It wasn't 5G, but the 4G signal proved that the network was also back. The first thing I did was open Twitter to see if the country had released any new news. As expected, there really was new news. The state sent out an announcement. I'm sorry to tell you so late, but La Nina has already arrived. We've already made a batch of spacesuits, and we've done our best to repair some of the cables in the area, and we're trying to restore the heating system as well. Please believe in the country. The country will not abandon every survivor. There were only a few dozen comments at the bottom, and it was not clear if these were the only survivors, or if the power had not been restored to other areas. The internet signal comes and goes, and through my cell phone, I realized that the world above ground is now completely covered in snow and ice, and the cities look like ice sculptures carved out by nature, with flying snow sweeping in and gusty winds raging. Not only our country, but the rest of the world was completely covered by blizzard and cold. Even the countries near the equator were not spared. The average temperature on the surface of the Earth has reached minus 138 degrees Celsius, a temperature that would turn a person into an ice sculpture on the spot if they went outside. But with internet and power restored, there is hope. We could finally take off our heavy down coats and sit around the living room in a relaxed state. I swiped through the jitterbugs to see if anyone nearby was similarly alive. A video of a man in a space astronaut suit earnestly fixing a solar generator came into view. The generator looked so familiar. It was the one in our house. Hey, my friend, I don't know if you can see this video, and I don't know if you are alive in this world, but I want to tell you that when I was fixing the wires, I found your solar generator by the way, and by the way, I helped you guys to pick the locks, and fixed it, and by the way, I made a protective layer, and it won't cut off the power even in minus 200 degrees cold temperature. You stay alive, and we'll all hang in there. I showed the video to everyone, and my dad praised it. I replied under the video, we're all still alive. Currently hiding in the basement. Thank you for helping me fix the generator. I believe the end times will always pass. Have a safe and smooth journey and stay safe. That side actually sent me a private message. He first showed the certificate of senior mechanical repairer of the state organization and asked me where exactly I lived. The state would send a commissioner to send down the spacesuits after a while, and then transfer the survivors to the underground ferry boat. Immortal Boat is the code name for the National Fortress of Refuge. Turns out we hadn't been abandoned. I looked at his certificate. His name was Shun Snap, and the picture was of a very young and handsome face. G glanced at it jealously and went back to the bedroom with a cold snort. I smiled and told him the exact address and the code to the basement door. After another 3 months, when the electricity was restored, we lived a more normal life again, not having to huddle together as a family to keep each other warm, or drink ice-cold mineral water, or live in a dark space. Father and G's hands got much better, and we were able to nestle together again to play poker and Three Kingdoms. Ah G, have you been cheating? How come you're always so good at poker? I didn't. Snap's side was quiet, and the message showed that it had been read but not answered. But we didn't mind, even if we stayed in the basement. As long as the heating equipment didn't break down, we could live on until the end of time. The days just went by. I followed the Twitter feed from time to time. More and more countries and regions started to get their power and internet back, and the surface temperature remained around 130 degrees. On this day, we were awakened by a loud bang. A team of people in spacesuits walked in. The leader took off his helmet and walked up to me, revealing 2 small tiger teeth and smiling eyes. Hello, I don't want to eat cilantro. This was my jitterbug name. I looked at this handsome face, and it overlapped with the face on the work permit Snap showed me earlier. I was instantly excited. You're Snap, the one who helped us fix the solar generator. That's right, Ms. I don't want to eat cilantro, Snap acknowledged with a smile. There are 6 astronaut suits here, so put them on and come with us. We'll be responsible for helping you move all the food in the basement. Don't worry, the country has sufficient food reserves and won't confiscate what you have. Of course, if you are willing to donate a bag of rice, you can get a residence in the underground ferry boat. Donate, donate, donate. We donate. Is there air conditioning and underfloor heating over there? Dad donated my bag of rice with a big hand. Yes, they started to build it 6 years ago. It's far from the ground. The infrastructure is complete, even without air conditioning and underfloor heating. The temperature is very comfortable. Snap explained. Okay, then let's hurry up and get dressed. Satisfied, Dad started to get dressed, and due to his poor hands, he ended up relying on his mom to help him get dressed. G and I also hurriedly changed our clothes and followed Snap out of the basement where we had lived for more than 2 years. As we passed by the first floor, I saw small mountains of spherical cat litter piled up in the corners. Help, I didn't shovel the poop. A little embarrassed, I glanced at Snap and realized that he was also smiling at me. I subconsciously averted my gaze as G stared forcefully at Snap, asserting his sovereignty. Cilantro-san's boyfriend gets jealous easily, huh? Arriving at the underground ferry boat, there were still hundreds of survivors like us inside. Outside, a carpet search is still being carried out, hoping to find more survivors. After all, there is hope for people to live, hope for the country, and hope for civilization. Because of the bag of rice, we were also given a residential building, and we didn't need the state to distribute rice, flour, grain, and oil, as well as other daily necessities because Snap had carried them all for us. Life was finally on track, and the post-apocalyptic crisis had finally come to an end. We still couldn't leave the ground to live on the surface, but everything was better, wasn't it? Life is already full of hope. Can the coming of sunshine be far away?